Right, so we've all seen the movies, haven't we? Big burly men with horned helmets sailing around in their dragon-headed longships, terrorizing the poor defenseless monks of England. Sounds like a jolly good time, doesn't it? Ah, the Vikings, those notorious Norse seafarers from the late 8th to early 11th century. They've been portrayed in every conceivable medium, from film to literature, even video games and comic books. And most of these portrayals share a common theme. They present Vikings as these larger-than-life, fearsome warriors, donning horned helmets, wielding mighty axes and causing mayhem wherever they set foot. Now, this image of the Viking as the quintessential barbarian is undoubtedly entertaining, but let's be honest, it's also wildly exaggerated. I mean, come on, horned helmets? Really? It's as if someone decided to slap a pair of horns on a helmet one day and thought, yes, that looks sufficiently terrifying. Let's go with that. And don't get me started on the dragon-headed longships. Sure, they're visually stunning and all, but they're not exactly practical, are they? Imagine trying to navigate through a narrow river with a gigantic dragon's head sticking out in front. Not so fearsome when you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, are you? Not to mention the whole pillaging and plundering bit. Yes, the Vikings did engage in raids, but they were also traders, explorers and settlers. They established colonies, developed trade routes, and even discovered new lands. But of course, that's not as exciting as a horde of horn-helmeted warriors charging into battle, is it? So we have this popularized image of Vikings, a mix of historical fact, half-truths, and outright fiction, all blended together to create a compelling narrative. But let's ask ourselves, just how accurate is this swashbuckling image of our Viking pals? Let's dig a bit deeper, shall we? Let's start with the most glaring error, the horned helmets. As much as we love a good horned helmet, there's just one small problem. Vikings didn't actually wear them. Now, I know what you're thinking, but they look so cool. Well, truth be told, they're about as historically accurate as a T-Rex playing the violin. Yes, we've all seen the images of fierce Viking warriors charging into battle, horned helmets glinting in the sun. It's an image that's been burned into our collective consciousness thanks to countless movies, TV shows, and even some rather dubious history books. But the fact of the matter is, horned helmets were about as common in the Viking era as smartphones and hoverboards. Furthermore, just think about it for a moment. Would you want to go into a brutal, life-or-death battle wearing something that could easily be grabbed by your enemy, potentially twisting your neck or yanking your head around? I didn't think so. In the heat of battle, a horned helmet would be more of a liability than an asset. And if that weren't enough, the archaeological evidence, or rather the lack of it, speaks volumes. Not a single authentic Viking helmet with horns has ever been found. That's right, not one. The closest we've got is a ceremonial helmet dating back to the Bronze Age, hundreds of years before the Vikings even set sail. So where did this myth come from? Well, it seems we have the 19th century to thank for that. During the Romantic era, artists and writers were all about creating dramatic, evocative images. And what's more dramatic than a Viking warrior with a horned helmet? It's a classic case of let's not let the truth get in the way of a good story, so there you have it, the horned helmet hoax, a myth that's as enduring as it is inaccurate. So, next time you're at a fancy dress party, maybe think twice before donning that horned helmet. Now, onto the pillaging and plundering. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? But was that all the Vikings were about? Don't be so quick to judge. Sure, the Vikings had a knack for raiding and looting, but they were also savvy traders and intrepid explorers. Yes, you heard it right. Those burly, bearded men with intimidating longships were as much into bartering and business as they were into battles. Let's delve a little deeper. The Vikings, originating from what is now Denmark, Norway and Sweden, had established extensive trade routes that spanned the globe. From the chilly plains of Greenland to the sun-soaked markets of Constantinople, they traded a variety of goods. Think furs, tusks, iron, honey, and yes, even slaves. Their trading voyages took them far and wide, all the way to the Eastern Roman Empire and possibly even as far as Baghdad. They were known to trade with the Sami people of the Arctic, the Arab merchants of the Middle East, and the Byzantines in the south. The Viking trading network was so extensive that it's said a fur from a Scandinavian bear could end up in a market in Baghdad. But the Vikings were not just traders, they were explorers too. They discovered and settled in new lands like Iceland and Greenland. The brave Viking explorer Leif Erikson even made it to North America. a good 500 years before Christopher Columbus did. So let's set the record straight. The Vikings were not just fierce warriors and fearsome raiders, they were also shrewd businessmen, skilled negotiators, and bold explorers. They were a complex, multifaceted people with a rich and diverse culture. Therefore, next time you picture a Viking, don't just imagine a horned helmet and a bloodied axe. Think of a merchant, a sailor, an explorer. Think of a Viking longship not just as a war vessel, but also as a cargo ship laden with exotic goods from distant lands. So perhaps the Vikings were more interested in trading spices than in stealing gold. Another thing, these Vikings were not the dirty, unkempt brutes they're often made out to be. Quite the contrary, dear listeners. Historical evidence suggests Vikings were rather keen on hygiene and grooming. I know, shocking, right? But bear with me. Archaeological excavations across Scandinavia have revealed an interesting array of grooming tools. We're talking about combs made from bones, tweezers, razors, and even ear spoons. Yes, ear spoons. It seems these seafaring folks like to keep their ears as clean as their ships. And then there's the matter of bathing. While the rest of Europe was still debating whether or not bathing could lead to an unfortunate case of the Black Death, Vikings were all about it. They had a whole day dedicated to it. Lagdag, or washing day. A day, mind you, not a month or a year, as was common in some other places. You see, Viking settlements often had bathhouses, much like the Roman thermos. These were not just places to wash away the dirt and grime of a hard day's raiding. They were also social hubs, where the locals could relax, gossip, and perhaps plan the next pillaging spree. And let's not forget about their hair. Vikings loved a good hairstyle. Women, men, everyone had their hair neatly combed and braided. Some even dyed their hair with lye to achieve that blonde Viking look. Who knew Vikings were the original trendsetters? And teeth? Well, they didn't have toothpaste as we know it, but they did use twigs as toothbrushes and ashes, or crushed eggshells as toothpaste. So while they might not have had the minty fresh breath we're used to, they certainly put in the effort to keep their teeth clean. In conclusion, it's time we updated our mental image of the Vikings. They were not just fierce warriors, but also quite the hygienic folks. So our Viking friends were not just clean, but they were probably better groomed than most of us on a Sunday morning. And let's not forget the Viking women. Far from being the submissive housewives they're often portrayed as, Viking women held significant power and influence. You see, Viking women were not just the wives or mothers of tough Viking men, they were much more than that. They managed the household and the farm in the absence of their husbands, who were often away on trading or raiding expeditions. They were the backbone of Viking society, ensuring the smooth running of their homes and communities. But their roles didn't stop there. Viking women had rights that were quite revolutionary for the age. They could own property and land, something that was unheard of in many other societies during the same period. A Viking woman could inherit her husband's wealth and become a powerful landowner, managing her property and conducting business transactions. Even in matters of marriage, Viking women were not merely pawns. They could choose their husbands, and if the marriage wasn't working out, they had the right to divorce. Yes, you heard it right. Viking women could, and often did, divorce their husbands for reasons ranging from infidelity to simply not being able to provide for the family. And let's debunk another myth while we're at it. Viking women weren't just relegated to the background, they also participated in warfare. Shield maidens, as they were called, fought alongside their male counterparts, showcasing their bravery and skill in battle. Viking women were also involved in crafting, weaving, and trading, contributing to the economy of their society. They had a significant role in religious rituals too, often acting as seers or priestesses, guiding their people through spiritual matters. So while the image of a Viking may conjure up a burly man with a horned helmet, let's not forget the Viking women. They were not just bystanders in their society, they were active participants, shaping their culture and their legacy. So it seems the Viking women were not just fierce warriors, but also savvy businesswomen. So were the Vikings actually losers? Well, if being a loser means exploring new lands, trading with diverse cultures, and maintaining a surprisingly modern society, then sure, they were absolute losers. We've taken you on a journey through the Viking era, debunking myths and shedding light on the reality of their lives. We've busted the horned helmet hoax, explored the Viking hygiene practices, and even touched upon the role of Viking women. Now it's time to answer the question, were the Vikings really losers? We often picture Vikings as ruthless raiders, charging into villages with axes in hand, pillaging and plundering. While there's no denying that raids were a part of their lifestyle, I think that's all they did. Vikings were also explorers and traders, venturing into uncharted territories and establishing trade routes throughout Europe, Asia, and even North America, centuries before Columbus decided to set sail. They were pioneers, pushing the boundaries of their known world. They braved the treacherous seas, not just for the thrill of the raid, but to discover new lands and resources. They established settlements, farmed the land, and traded with the locals. They were not just warriors, but also farmers, craftsmen, and merchants. But were they losers? Well, if being a loser means having a rich culture with their own intricate mythology and poetry, their own laws and social structures, and a level of gender equality that was unheard of in the Middle Ages, then yes, they were losers. If being a loser means leaving a lasting impact on the world, influencing language, culture, and even the course of history, then the Vikings were the biggest losers of them all. So next time you think of a Viking, remember they were much more than just horned helmet-wearing pillaging brutes. They were explorers, traders, and pioneers of their time.